Kroger just announced they're going to eliminate paid pandemic-related leave and charge $50 per month to every employee who is not vaccinated. Now, they're not saying this is a mandate. They're saying not a mandate, but it's pretty close. How many more companies will get their cues from Kroger as you hear this and go, hey, Kroger's doing it, we're going to do it too? Let me bring in from PCS Advisers, Paul Siegert, who consults businesses about stuff like this. Paul, good morning. How you been?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing fine. So the $50 surcharge is going in effect on the 1st of January. It's going to apply to salaried associates in the company health plan. The extra expense is going to add up to $600 a year. 12 times 5 or 12 times 50. They're also going to continue a one-time $100 bonus if you get vaccinated, so incentivizing the vaccine. But also, as I said, starting on the 1st, if you're a vaccinated employee and you get sick from COVID, you can get up to 2 weeks paid leave without using your regular PTO. If you're unvaccinated and get it, guess what? You're on your own. That's as pretty close to a mandate as you can get. Would you agree?
Yeah, it is, although I think a lot of people would prefer this route over the mandate route, and it's a sign of the times that the mandates have been, the employers can do a mandate. They're the only ones whose mandates have legally seemingly stood up to challenge, but now that they're not being required to by OSHA, at least not currently and probably not likely going forward, they're going back to doing some of the things that they maybe would have preferred to do that are a little less divisive.
Well, you know what, though? But
keyword is little.
Yeah. But as a business, right, you have freedom of association. This falls under that constitutionally protected clause that says, hey, listen, you can decide, without, you're not discriminating against people. Yeah, based on how they were born. And that's, gender, color, sexual orientation, stuff like that. That's under freedom of association. This is, the company saying, hey, this is what we need to keep our costs down.
Yeah, and you've got airlines that are doing similar things but charging $200. Mm-hmm. Even the most extreme that I've seen so far is Ochsner Health in Louisiana. $200 if your spouse is unvaccinated. Yeah. I look a lot of this stuff and I say, is it really about the cost of COVID to their health plan? And I don't think, I don't want to say I'm jaded, but, I just look at the numbers of all this stuff and it often isn't. In the case of that Ochsner Health situation, their profits were 10x what were the year prior. Mm-hmm. And all years prior, they did great through COVID. And then they also, these health plans all had wonderful years as well through COVID. For the most part, claims were on the net, they were down because we all didn't go get normal health care.
Yeah, I know you talked about that before, the paradox of how they made more money when everyone has COVID and everything's shut down. It's fascinating. I don't want to rehash that one, but so companies are. What's the motive then for Kroger to do this? If it's really not saving them money healthcare wise, is it optics? What is it?
Yeah, I think so. There's optics there. Plus, they're going to make their health plan and their expense related to their health plan a little bit less. And I think a lot of employers are using COVID as cover to do some things that they maybe have wanted to do for a while. So healthcare is a massive expense for employers, especially an employer like Kroger. They've got 465,000 employees. I mean, it is a major expense. And for them to be able to offset that a little bit, at least on a spreadsheet, it makes good sense.
Do you think there's enough employees who are unvaccinated to make that big a difference?
They probably have 30% of them that are unvaccinated. Okay. Wouldn't surprise me. So, you do the math
over
on
100,000, okay.
Yeah, it could add up.
Yeah, I mean, that's a significant chunk.
And then on the other side, they're saying, hey, if you're vaccinated and you get COVID, you're going to get a couple weeks off if it's, you have a serious case of COVID. Well, a lot of those folks won't have serious cases, so I don't think they'll incur a lot.
Yeah, that's probably true. And then the people who are unvaccinated are paying for those people's basically 2 weeks off. Yeah. That's the way to look at it. It's a wash for Kroger. I think there's the other thing too, and then there's there's what sounds good, and Kroger comes out and says, "Hey, listen, you're vaccinated. We'll give you a $100 bonus if you get vaccinated. If you're not vaccinated, you get sick with COVID, which is highly unlikely. But we'll give you 2 weeks off with pay. But if you don't get vaccinated." Oh, yeah, and you get sick, you're on your own, you're not going to use your PT or whatever, you got to use your own time off, and not only that, we're going to ding you $50 a month on your health insurance and charge you $50 a month to be unvaccinated. Now, that sounds great in a boardroom, it probably sounds great as corporate policy and the optics, and it's good with shareholders, but then there's the real world, right, in the user end, as we say, and I don't see how policies like this result in people being safer. Won't this just lead to people trying to work while they're sick? I mean, if there's no if you're I don't know, let's say you're a bagger or you're stocking in the overnight hours, there's no reason to get tested if you feel a little sick with a scratchy throat. You just won't get tested, and you're like, unless you're in the hospital, it's a different story. But if you're one of the many who get COVID and you're among the walking sick, uninformed is good in this case. You're not going to go get a test anyway. You're like, if I got COVID, I got COVID. So isn't that really not doing anything? Actually, making it worse, isn't it?
Yeah. So many of these things have had unintended consequences that end up worsening the situation. And this, I think, very well could be one of those things.
This is so screwed up now. We're at a state now where, initially we had talked, Paul, all along during the pandemic, Paul Siegert from PCS Healthcare Advisors, how companies are going to deal with this and the paid time off and the sickness and all this and the vaccine. And people are, we're all burned out on vaccine talk. And then now we're making policies in this case, and you go, okay, well, this is going to have the opposite effect, I think, that if you wind up getting sick and you're younger, probably, right? You're like, well, I may have COVID, but who cares? I'm going to walk around and I'll spread it around to people who don't, rather than stay home and get a test and not get paid.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the effect on the whole system in terms of are employers doing mandates, are they doing things like this as much as they said they would before all the OSHA announcement came down and the confusion related to that, and that's had an unintended consequence as well. When we were talking some time back before the administration made that OSHA announcement, 85% of employers would tell you they were going to have some sort of policy like this in place by the end of the year. Now only 18 do, a very small percentage, and only 7% more say they'll do something regardless of what happens in the courts. And the balance say either they're not going to do it, a big portion, or 32% who say if it stands to court scrutiny, the OSHA requirement, then we'll comply. Until then, we're not going to. So we're down really to 18 plus 7. We're going to have taken it from 85% down to 25% in the period of time that's transpired because of confusion, and then there you have another unintended consequence of.
We always talk about how the free markets will sort this out, right? The last thing you want is a government mandate. Let companies like Kroger and Delta Airlines and others, come up with policies, and they work, and other companies will adopt it. If not, it'll go by the wayside. It looks like the policy in most of corporate America right now, Paul Siegert, is just like, you know what? Don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah, pretty much. And we're at a place now where this has been part of America, part of the world's health situation for so long. That it wasn't a week or two ago, they went out and tested our population, and 92% of us had antibodies, whether we got that through natural infection or getting vaccinated. And I'm not an anti-vaxxer or anything. I'm just saying we're not at the same level of risk from a public health standpoint as we were if we were having this conversation a year or a year and a half ago. You just have it's here. This is an endemic. It's not going away.
Yep.
We have to live with it, and it's already gone through most of the population.
Paul Siegert from PCS Healthcare Advisors talking about Kroger eliminating paid pandemic-related leave for those who are unvaccinated. And if you're an unvaccinated Kroger worker, they're going to charge you $50 per month if you're on their health care as incentive to get you vaccinated, although it's just going to lead, in my opinion, to people who are unvaccinated still showing up to work. Unless you're so sick that you're hospitalized or you can't come in, that's a different story. But by and large, there's a lot of people who get it who don't know they have it that are maybe spreading it around. But, we've talked about this ad nauseum. It's by now either get the vaccine or don't. If you don't, then look at the hospitals right now. They're overwhelmed with people who are sick from whatever variant it is, largely Delta. Omicron is not what we thought it would be, or at least, it didn't pan out. Maybe not what it thought. From the jump, it was like, hey, we got a new variant so far. We'll figure it out in a few weeks. We'll know where we stand. It looks like it's not that big a deal, but people are still being hospitalized. ERs are overflowing with COVID patients right now, and it's all people who didn't get vaccinated.
Yeah, and I think, look at Colorado. The governor there, who's a Democrat governor, said, look, this is here to stay. You've had a chance to get vaccinated. We're not doing any more mandates or anything like that. It's over. Sorry. It's over. We're throwing in the towel. We're living with this. You can get vaccinated if you want. If you don't want to, that's your choice. Right. And you can deal with the outcome. I think that's a pretty level-headed approach at this point.
Yeah. Paul,
I think most of the high-risk people are vaccinated.
Yeah, I think so too. And if you don't, that's on you. But if you're in the EI, I guess the part where it kind of troublesome for me is, if let's say I'm doing some work or something happens, I get hurt. Someone has a medical issue, a heart attack, a stroke, get in a car accident, all those things. Now treatment is really, really hard. If you go in with a typical injury, sports injury, something like that, the ER, the ED department, so overwhelmed with COVID patients now, it's detrimentally going to affect you.
Well, that can be a reality depending on where you are. Mm-hmm. And then that kind of ties into the whole conversation, too, in terms of how are these healthcare employees dealing with it, because they've had a staffing shortage since before the pandemic, and then these mandates really did threaten to have a bad impact on the system. And now you're seeing with the court stays or the mandates, you've got Kroger on the one hand saying, we're going to design our own policy, here's how we're going to do it. Mm-hmm. Stopping short of the mandate. Then you have the Cleveland Clinic and some very respected institutions like that coming out and saying, we're not doing a mandate now that we're not going to be required to. And here they are, premier healthcare organizations. We're not going to do a mandate. We'll do other things. We'll take proper precautions. But we need to staff our facility more than we need to do a mandate.
Yeah. Paul, the other thing, too, is that obviously it's big companies like Kroger, Delta, those big, we take our cues and businesses will take their cues and go, they're making news. As you said, almost 500,000 employees. People will pay attention. We also pay attention, obviously, to pop culture elements, right? Sports. And in this case, the NFL and the message they're sending. NFL sent a memo out Monday night announcing the Tier 1 and Tier 2 personnel. And those are basically players and coaches and the people that are around the team itself. And I'm talking about the players, our Tier 1 and 2 personnel. They're now mandated. The NFL was among the first to mandate the vaccine, and now they're mandating a booster by the 27th of December. What do you make of that?
I mean, that's definitely, you don't have an extremely high-risk population there, clearly. So.
No, you don't. It's the dumbest, and that's the message it sends. It's so confusing because the NFL's like, well, we got to get out and have, now everyone's going to have a booster. It's like, who's, and there's still guys that are on the COVID list. I don't understand.
I think it's the definition of virtue signaling, which they've been guilty of as an organization. And then, it's incredible. Same thing with the military. They're actually, I think yesterday, were the first round of military members were booted out of the military for not getting vaccinated. Again, not a high-risk population. We still don't seem to talk about who's high risk that openly, because it's the same people that are driving the hospitalizations for COVID that are driving the cost of the whole system. 86% of the costs in our system are the result of lifestyle decisions and obesity primarily, and everything that comes out of that. And that's the high-risk population for COVID by and large.
Well, I pointed about EDs being overflown and saying, hey, listen, if I get in with a broken leg or a sports injury, or I cut my thumb with a circular saw and I need to get treatment, now I'm triaged with a bunch of COVID patients, and there are people who didn't want to get the vaccine. But guess what? The ED, I think, is a collective petri dish of people who do dumb stuff. or just get, think about it, right? It's always, that's what the ED department exists for. Well, you did something, 9 out of 10, maybe even 99 out of 100 cases, it's somebody who did something stupid. It's like, I caused a traffic accident. Now, I may be the victim of a traffic accident. Okay, I didn't do anything stupid. I was wrong place, wrong time. But I think you know what I'm saying, right? It's like, what were you doing? Yeah, well, I tried to stretch out a single, and I'm a 45-year-old softball player, and I tried to take second, and I blew my hamstring out. And now you got I essentially curtain my Achilles is in the bag and a ball in the back of my calf right now. Go fix it. Or I was putting up Christmas lights and I fell off a ladder because I thought I'd be stable enough and it wasn't. We do dumb stuff. We go to the ED. The ED exists. It should just be called I'm a dumbass department is what it is.
I was in this is not scientific, it's anecdotal, but I had to take my 8-year-old daughter to Children's in Vanderbilt in Nashville. The COVID room was completely empty. All the other ER waiting rooms were overflowing.
Really?
And so it's not, that's anecdotal, as I say, but right. You look at it.
Well, here we're having a problem. From what I understand, locally here in Cincinnati, Paul, we're pretty full.
Yeah, and that varies depending on the region.
Right. But, and it's largely stuff. Okay. And if I have a heart attack, why? Well, maybe, I shouldn't have a Happy Meal every meal, all the way up till age 35. It's going to catch up to you. So it's a lifestyle. And I chuck the COVID vaccine. I'm deciding to do something, not do something that could have a prophylactic effect on the quality of my life. And, whether it's diet or exercise or vaccines, we're all guilty of the same thing to some degree.
Yeah, I mean, we need to turn that conversation on a little more, and let's talk about that. I think as a country, I don't expect it doesn't sell well, so it may not be a big headline, but that's really the costs are being driven the same way they've been, whether it's through COVID or whatever the next thing is that comes along. The high-risk population is going to be the high-risk population.
Yeah,
so we're going to have to learn how to do a better job of not just creating pills for these people and treatments, but encouraging a better lifestyle.
Paul Seegert on the show on 700 WLW's PCS Healthcare Advisors, advisory to businesses and trying to keep their healthcare costs down. And the news that Kroger is really essentially as close to a mandate as you can get for unvaccinated employees. Start punishing you $50 a month if you're an unvaccinated Kroger worker. It's going to cost you $50 more a month for healthcare, and if you get sick and you're unvaccinated, you're kind of on your own when it comes to sick days. And incentivizing people to get the vax with a $100 bonus, and if you get sick and you have the vaccine, which a lot of people aren't getting sick, but if you do, they're going to cover you there too as well. This mandate from Joe Biden really died on the vine, didn't it?
Yeah, and in fact, I think that's the amount of confusion that created is on our list of unintended consequences. When you look at the fact that, as I mentioned a minute ago, 85% of employers were going to put something in, and then they all put the brakes on because who, as an employer, you don't like confusion. You're not going to invest time and resources when you're already strapped and dealing with a pandemic anyway to build out a policy that you then have to rework and go back to the drawing board when the government finally issues its OSHA ruling. So in that pause, they whittled the numbers way down where we're currently sitting at 18% who are. And you know what? It could be worse. You could be in New Zealand. They just announced, I think yesterday, that if you aren't vaccinated and you get hospitalized, they're going to send you a bill for the entire amount.
Wow, incredible. Wow, we're not going to have that here, fortunately. Paul Seegert, all the best. Thanks. Happy holidays, buddy. Always appreciate your thoughtful insights here. It's really good.